Welcome back to the MOOC course titled Qualitative Research Methods. My name is Aradhana Malik and I am helping you with this course. And we've been discussing a whole bunch of things related to qualitative research. Now today we are going to, in this lecture, we will discuss the interpretation of documents and material culture. So this is a way of interpreting the qualitative data that we get. So let's move on with this. This is again from the same book, Handbook of Qualitative Research Methods, edited by Denzin and Lincoln, and there is a paper by Hodder in this book, and that is the paper I am referring to. Okay. Now, artifact analysis and its importance for the interpretation experience. When we talk about material culture, we are talking about artifacts. What are artifacts? Artifacts are things that we have in our environment, things, physical material things that we use in our environment. These pair of glasses, this is an artifact. The clothes that I am wearing, these are artifacts. The pens that I am using, these are artifacts. So what do I use to exhibit or to demonstrate or to represent the culture I am coming from? So these are artifacts. These are the physical things that we use in our day-to-day lives are called artifacts, and material culture is the culture represented through material objects. So for example, sitting in India, this dupatta, the scarf that women wear around their necks, is called as a dupatta or chunni. Now something like this is brightly colored, it's got golden specks on it. In the Indian culture, in a typical winter, on a typical winter day, a brightly colored scarf around women's necks does not really represent any festivity or anything out of the ordinary. It is something that we women in India normally do. We wear these scarves, you know, when we wear our pant and suit, which is known as a kurta pajama or a kurta salwar, then we use this scarf, and in the winters we wear bright colors. So it's not, this recording is happening on a January afternoon, and so it's cold. So it's not something out of the ordinary. Whereas in another culture, in another cultural setting, the bright pink color could be representative of festivities, of happiness, of something that is not so professional or related to the work environment of a person. So, you know, we represent, I don't have to tell you that it's normal. We all accept this as normal. When I look around my, you know, in my physical environment in IIT Kharagpur, everybody is wearing these colors. So it's not something totally out of the ordinary. It's a normal working day. We are all tired. It's the end of a working day, and we are all wearing these bright colors. There's nothing, you know, it's exceptional about it. So this is the way we represent our culture through material objects. What I use, what kind of physical things I use. Now talking about typical professional men who use the brand and the model of cell phone that they use is representative of the status they think they have or the status they want to portray to their colleagues. So you know, these are material objects that represent the culture that we are coming from, and they represent what we are thinking about ourselves and how we want to be perceived in the community. So I mean, I'm giving you these different examples. Again, you know, this is how culture is expressed by people through the objects that we use in our day-to-day lives. Artifacts represent the environment under study. We pick specific physical objects, tangible things that we can touch and feel and measure and see and hear, and we take these as representatives of the environment that we are studying. The environment being studied directs the interpretation of the artifacts associated with it in and through contextual references. Now the artifacts represent the environment, and any study of the environment revolves around, it is the artifacts direct the study, and the artifacts are interpreted within the context that they are found in. For example, this is a scarf. We call it a chunni. It serves multiple purposes. One, it is a part of our dress. Winter, summer, we women wear it. In the winters, it doubles up as a regular scarf that prevents, you know, that protects our necks from cold. So, I mean, it is not only a protection for our necks, it is also a part of the normal clothing that we wear. So, looking at it contextually, the bright color does nothing to how we use this scarf, but the bright color is representative of the culture that we are in, and you could interpret it in both ways. It's part of the dress and it's also a covering for the neck. The way I've draped it around today shows that it's winter and I may be trying to protect my neck in order, you know, in addition to at least trying to look professional. So, we interpret these material objects within a context. They also represent the context that is being interpreted. For example, the placement of reading material or altars in our homes in India. That's another example. In India, we are taught that books that books represent knowledge and knowledge is sacred. Any reading material that we have is preferably not placed at the foot of the bed. We keep books in our bedrooms, but we try to not keep these books at the foot of the bed. We don't have book racks where the soles are or facing the soles of our feet. We have book racks either next to our heads or on the side wall. Similarly with altars, prayer areas, the shelves that we have on which we, you know, put our prayer material. It is typically kept at a level that is above the person's head and or the head of at least one of the people. Of course, it has to be reachable, and it is never placed at the foot of the bed. So, that is one thing that is it shows how we treat these material objects, especially with books. I remember having a discussion with some American friends when I was studying in the US about not being able to jump over books, or, you know, not putting my books and shoes in the same compartment of a bag. I would feel very uncomfortable if books and shoes were in the same bag, one, and I still cannot put books and shoes in the same compartment of the bag. You know, if I am forced to do it, they will be wrapped, there will be some other things between the two. This is the way we are trained. I am not saying that people who do it are being disrespectful. Maybe they have much more respect for knowledge than I have, but this is representative of the way the treatment of material objects in our culture informs observers about our culture. So, this is the analysis of artifacts and the way these artifacts are treated, and artifacts are these physical possessions that we have. Okay. Toward a theory of material culture. The theory of material culture refers to the use of symbols or artifacts along with documents in particular areas of reference. So, how these symbols or artifacts are used along with the documents within the particular areas of reference is the theory of material culture. How is material culture expressed? Some material culture is designed specifically to be communicative and representational. For example, in the case of written texts or overly explicit symbols like uniforms, badges, emblems and the like. So, material culture, things that we use are very expressive, they speak for themselves, they do not need very much interpretation, they communicate the message they are supposed to communicate, they are representative of the behavior they need to represent. For example, uniforms in schools, we have badges, we have emblems, we have insignia, we have crests, etc. So, these are communicative and representational elements of material culture, and the author in this paper feels that the development of complex symboling systems allows more information to be processed more efficiently. The more complex these symboling systems are, the more the information there is in these systems. The complexity adds to the richness of the information that is present in these symbols that are complex. Okay. The other significance here is the ideological component of symbols is identified within relations of power and domination, and increasingly power and systems of value and prestige are seen as multiple and dialectical. So this means that the relations of power and dominance are also represented by the way these material objects are treated. A significant implication of this is the inability to produce dictionaries of material culture, as different people interpret different things differently in time and space. Something that may be representative of power and authority today may not be representative of power and authority tomorrow. Something that represents a hierarchy in the system of things today, and it is seen as a system of as something that is representative of hierarchy today, may not be representative of the same hierarchy tomorrow. For example, and again this is an example that I draw upon from personal experience. When we were growing up, single color clothing, plain color clothing in the context that we were in was representative of a superior position. Pastel shades, single colored sweaters, single colored pants were representative of class and authority. Black, especially black. Black is a universal color, everybody likes to use it, but anyone wearing black was perceived to be more authoritative or in a position of power over those not wearing black. Grey and brown and blue came next, but black was supposed to be the most superior, most authoritative color. Nowadays that is not the case. The context has changed, the times have changed. Even in the same setting, everybody is wearing black. People are wearing black jackets. Black shoes were representative of formality. That is no longer the case. So, we are becoming more culturally expressive. My guess is that that was a fallout of the British influence that was there on India. So, we grew up in that kind of a setting, that this is very, very formal. Now, the definitions of formality have changed. So, colors, the way we use our, the kind of clothing we wear, the way we talk, English for example, English speaking was considered to be more professional. Anybody who spoke English was, in India, was at one point of time considered to be in a position of higher authority than, or in the professional circles that, and again I am classifying this information, English was supposed to be or treated as the more professional way of communication. That is no longer the case. It is more about utility. English, yes, it is a medium of international communication. However, people who use the local language are not treated very much differently than people who speak English in a certain way. So, those things are changing. This is the way cultures express themselves, and that is again indicative of how material culture, what we say, how we do things, what we do, what we do not do, is indicative of our culture and how culture is interpreted. And these things, these interpretations change dramatically over space and time and by, in and through context. So, I am referring to a specific context. At that point also, maybe these things were not so common in another context, but these definitions have changed even within the context that I am referring to. You must have seen over time, anybody who is above 30 years of age will have experienced this. The way things have changed in the past 20, 25, 30 years is tremendous. Okay. Material meanings in time. Different symbols assume different meanings at different points in time, and the contexts vary with time. Representatives of material culture mean different things at different points in time. What we think used to be important, what we thought was important a long time ago, is no longer so important. When I was growing up, when I was in college, laptops were not so common. I mean, they had just started coming to India, and I mean, it was considered a matter of prestige to even own a laptop. It was considered a matter of prestige even to own a desktop in your house. So at that time, you know, it was so uncommon. Cell phones, we had these big huge cellular phones, something brand new, you know. So and that happens with any new technology. These days it's so commonly, it's freely available, everybody's seen carrying a laptop. Similarly, traveling abroad was not so common. So these were all expressions of our ability to do things that we wanted to do. And these traveling abroad is no longer considered to be a very prestigious event. In India, most people in middle class families have passports that they have used. So, you know, so these things, because of the ease of international communication, again, it's not only an expression, a change in the expression of material culture, it's also the ability to do certain things that were not really so common for various reasons. People can afford it, they have more opportunity, so it's a complex phenomenon. However, these expressions have cultural implications also. Okay, contexts vary with time. Okay, the method of interpreting material culture, 3 areas which can be used to evaluate the quality of interpretation of material artifacts are: 1, the researcher should identify the context within which the things had a similar meaning. There are boundaries of the context that are never given, they have to be interpreted. So, things with similar meanings have to be interpreted, and the similarity of meanings has to be interpreted. These boundaries are not defined. These boundaries emerge as a result of interpretation of different material objects within the same culture, and we say, okay, these interpretations look similar, so they must be within the same boundary, they must be connected to each other. Okay, the second area of evaluation deals with the recognition of similarities and differences. In a context, people respond to similar situations within specific boundaries, but it is very, very difficult to define boundaries. That's exactly what I am saying. Boundaries emerge, similarities and differences emerge. The researcher must be equipped to identify these similarities and differences. Okay. The researcher must be vigilant, must be perceptive, must be alert to the environment that the researcher is trying to interpret or observing, to see what can be classified as a similarity and what is a difference, where can these material objects be clubbed and where they need to be put into different categories, because these similarities and differences emerge from the way material culture is interpreted. The third criterion deals with the relevance of general and specific historical theories to the data in hand. Now, the data that is collected for any type of qualitative research is collected over a period of time, and this is very, very important. The context in which the data was collected changes, and with the change in context, the relevance of the data so collected may also come into question. So, the historical background and the relevance of specific historical theories becomes very important. One must be aware of the historical context in which the data was collected, related to which the data is going to be interpreted, and its relevance with the current state of the same historical context, and that is very, very important. How has the context evolved to its present state, and how will this material, this interpretation that held, or the way the material culture was interpreted in the context from which it was collected, will fare today, in today's historical, stage of the same historical context, and that is extremely important here. The researcher has to be aware of this shift in the context as well as the interpretation. Okay, confirmation. Confirmation is the interpretation of documents and material culture which may be carried out through coherence and correspondence. So, there are two ways in which the researcher can confirm whether the interpretations hold good or not. These two ways of doing that are, one is coherence. Coherence is seen if the parts of the argument do not contradict each other and the conclusions follow from the premises. So, the argument that is drawn to interpret culture, the specific material culture, needs to be sound, the parts of the argument need to be connected with each other, and the premises on which the argument is being drawn must lead to the conclusions. And coherence may be both internal and external. Correspondence embeds the fit of data and theory with coherence. So, data are made to cohere by being linked with theoretical arguments. Correspondence means that the data and theory fit together within coherently with each other. So, this is what I have found out, and this is what theory says about it, and this is how these two are connected. This is how I found out, and this is how it fits into or extends the theory, and that is called correspondence. The data corresponds to the theory. It either fits into the existing theory or it extends the theory in such a way that, I mean, it logically extends the theory that it is connected to or coming out of or linked to, etc. Okay. So, this is called correspondence. Now, elements pointing towards the success of the interpretation of data, some elements that tell us that the data, that the way the data has been interpreted is successful. First element is fruitfulness. Fruitfulness refers to the benefits produced by interpreting the data. What have we got out of it? We are working so hard, we are collecting all this information, we are interpreting it. What is the ultimate result? So, you know, what is the benefit? What am I gaining out of it? The second is number and kinds of new directions and new perspectives opened up at the end of the study. What have I gained in the current context, and how will it lead to further understanding, further addition of knowledge? So, that is fruitfulness. Why should I spend time? Why have I spent time and interpreting something? Why have I spent so much of time and effort and possibly money and other resources also? What is the ultimate benefit? What is the fruitfulness? The second is peer review, publications. At the end of the day, that is really the acid test of what we have found, whether whether whatever we have done is relevant and useful or not. So, peer review formally and informally in journals and on the number of people who believe, cite and build on our work. You can do a piece of research, you don't send it for publication. It's not going to work. Okay. We do a piece of research and we send it for publication, but nobody reads it. We send it for publication in an I won't say obscure journal, but in a lesser known journal. No use. We need to send it for publication in a journal that is reputed, or we need to send it for publication and then share that publication with others who are going to use it, so that the journal that was not known well earlier becomes well known because our publication is so useful. That is another way of doing it. So, if it gets published in a lesser known but very good quality journal, then the responsibility is shared by the author also for making that information known to others who can use it. And if through our efforts people start citing it, they start using it, and the journal gains out of it, win-win situation for both. Trustworthiness. So, people need to believe. When we talk about peer review, people need to believe, they need to be able to cite what we are saying, and they need to be able to build on whatever we are saying. They believe, they cite and they build on, they extend whatever knowledge we have created and use that to do something different based on what we have done, not only on that, but on several similar studies. So, this is the acid test: trustworthiness, professional credentials, and status of the author and supporters of an interpretation. How many people believe it, how many people support it, how many people believe the author. These elements point towards the success of the interpretation of data, and that is all we have time for in this lecture. We will continue with some more inputs on qualitative research methods in the next lecture. Thank you very much for listening.